amount of understanding on why the Republican Party is the way it is now versus before. And there's a lot of fear and a lot of fear mongering that was involved in how that transition occurred. So if nobody wants to talk about the State of the Union, I completely get it. We don't have to. We can literally talk through the Great Divorce piece. So I'll do that. And then if people want to talk about the State of the Union after that, then we can do that. Thank you for the hearts, by the way. So the Great Divorce. How Republicans abandoned reality for principles and then fucked America in the same breath. So this is something, so if you dislike the Republican Party and you want to understand the Republican Party and why they're doing what the fuck they're doing, then we can talk through that. And Elaine, I believe what I could probably do is tail end into that discussion the why the fuck Democrats didn't do anything last night, because I have a theory about that. So if you want to byline that into the why the fuck the Democrats didn't do anything last night, we can sort of confluence that conversation together. Because as I said, I have a theory about it. So the Great Divorce. So let's get one thing straight. I'm not here to coddle Republicans. They're assholes. There are moments in which they aren't assholes. I was reading today that there was a closed-door Republican session where Republican senators met with Elon Musk, where Elon Musk was explaining to Republican senators what he and Doge are doing. And I haven't released an article about this. I'll probably release one tomorrow or the day after about it. But basically, Rand Paul, who is the most despicable Republican that I can imagine, literally told Elon Musk that Doge can't do anything without congressional approval. So there are Republican senators that don't like what Musk is doing, and so they attempted to bring him to task. So the Nixon era. Richard Nixon, who was any amount of his own set of problems, but he understood something fundamental about American politics that his predecessors did not. You don't need to be right. You just need to be convincing. And I don't know. I mean, how convincing was it when Nixon said, I'm not a crook. I'm not a crook. He was, but let's not go there. So you remember when Nixon said, I'm not a crook? That wasn't just a defensive statement from a concerned politician. It was an early example of what would become the Republican playbook. And that playbook is you deny reality, create your own narrative, and repeat it until your base basically believes it. So Nixon is the reason that happens. Blame it all on Nixon. This whole constant repetitive deflection, projection bullshit until the base believes it, that was Nixon's fault. So the Nixon years gave us the first glimpse of what would become the standard operating procedure. When confronted with inconvenient facts, simply reject them until the base believes that you're right. When the Pentagon Papers revealed that the government had been lying about Vietnam, Nixon didn't engage with substance. He attacked the messenger. And then Nixon took that narrative by attacking the messenger and funneling it in his direction. When the Watergate investigation closed in, he didn't address the evidence. He fired the special prosecutor. As president, he deemed he had the power to fire the special prosecutor, who, by the way, was investigating him for the shit that he was doing. The approach created a blueprint for what the GOP's defining characteristic would be. The ability to ignore objective reality in favor of a narrative that served their own political purposes. Nixon's downfall wasn't a cautionary tale for Republicans. It was a lesson. Apologize for all the background noise. A little crazy here right now. Anyway, I'm good. So, don't get caught. And if you do, make sure your base is conditioned to disbelieve that you being caught was what actually happened. So now Nixon's out. Let's go into the late 70s and enter the moral majority. Now, does anybody remember the moral majority? Because if you don't know what the moral majority was, I'm about to educate you, and you're going to hate it because it sucks. Jerry Falwell. Jerry fucking Falwell. So, the Republican Party faced an identity crisis in the late 70s. The Watergate scandal had basically devastated public trust, and the traditional conservative economic policies weren't sufficiently distinct from Democratic centrism to mobilize or impassionate the base. Enter Jerry Falwell, the so-called moral majority, the answer to every GOP strategist's prayers. The moral majority was complete bullshit. Now, remember, this was the 70s. Republicans were desperately afraid of counterculture. You know, the counterculture of the 60s, going into the 70s, free love and liberalism and social change scared the shit out of them. And so they were so fucking afraid of it that they said, no, we have to fight this. So Falwell's moral majority was a ready-made constituency, evangelical Christians who felt alienated by the social changes from the previous decade, ripe for political activation. And all the GOP had to do was present itself as the guardian of traditional values. So whenever you see the Republican Party getting behind their whole narrative that they're the protectors of morality, that's where this bullshit started. And so they could secure millions and millions of loyal voters who would support them not because of policy outcomes, but because of shared moral outrage. The alliance between the Republican Party and the evangelical Christianity sect wasn't just a marriage of convenience. It was a fundamental reorientation of how politics functioned. No longer would Republicans need to defend their policies based on results. They could just simply claim God was on their side, and that's why the fuck they did it. How do you argue with divine endorsement? You don't. God is an insurmountable, undefiable entity of pure good. And one day we're going to have that conversation about why I believe that's bullshit. But not today. Not today. So the real genius of this move was that it allowed Republicans to recast political disagreements as moral battles. Democrats weren't just wrong on policy, they were morally corrupt and attacking the very fabric of American society. That's how we ended up with Reagan for 2 terms. I mean, Reagan's entire 80s era presidency happened because the moral majority had outraged the Republican Party, the people who voted Republican. That was how that fucking played out. And so when every political debate became a holy war, compromise becomes impossible because facts become irrelevant because God. If you believe you're fighting for God, evidence doesn't matter. Faith is sufficient. And let's be clear, the advent of Christianity holds true to the fact that that's about faith. That's not about fact. And I'm not attacking anybody's faith by saying that. I'm merely saying that godly understanding requires a much larger body of faith than based on fact. And there's a whole slew of reasons for this, and we can talk about those in a future live. So Peter Weyrich, one of the founders of Moral Majority, wasn't shy about the strategy. He literally said, I don't want everybody to vote. Our leverage in the elections quite candidly goes up as the voting populace goes down. In other words, the goal wasn't to win over a majority with better ideas. It was to energize a minority with righteous anger and make sure that they showed up at the polls. So if Republicans got angry, that would get the vote out and they would win. Or it was their belief that they would win. And this wasn't just cynical. I mean, it was a deliberate rejection of democracy's core premise, which is that governance should reflect the will of the majority. Instead, the GOP embraced a new vision. Governance should reflect the values of the right people, even if they were outnumbered. Project 2025. That's Project 2025 all over again. So, if Nixon provided the blueprint and the Moral Majority provided the base, Ronald Reagan provided the charisma to sell the new approach into American politics. And that's how we ended up with Reagan. So Reagan was a complete idiot. But he understood Americans didn't necessarily want truth. They wanted a story that made them feel good about themselves and their country. And I'll remind everybody that for the last 2 years of Reagan's presidency, he was literally a functional Alzheimer's patient. If you're a fan of Reagan and that offends you, I apologize, but that's what happened. His 1980 campaign slogan, "Let's make America great again," wasn't just rhetoric. And by the way, doesn't that sound familiar? Reagan said, "Let's make America great again." I don't know why that sounds so familiar. It was a deliberate appeal to nostalgia for a mythical American past that never really existed at all. It didn't matter that the golden age of American prosperity and moral clarity was just a fiction. What mattered was that it felt true to millions of voters who were uncomfortable with the complexity of modern life and then the ebbing flow of social change. Remember, in the 80s, we dealt with the ebbing flow of people being gay, came out, and there was the LGBT movement at its beginnings that happened in the 80s. We had the AIDS crisis. And that just energized Republicans to attack that social change going forward. So Reagan's economic policies were trickle-down economics. Reaganomics was all about trickle-down, perfectly exemplified that new approach to governance. The idea that cutting taxes for the wealthy would stimulate growth and ultimately benefit everyone was unsupported by economic evidence. So Reaganomics was a horrible disaster, drove the debt ceiling way the fuck up, and then started this whole problem. It just Michael Ganon, yeah, I agree with you. Reagan killed a whole bunch of shit. But it didn't need to be true. It just needed to be sound, plausible, and aligned with the Republican principles. So the GOP now claimed to stand for limited government, individual freedom, and faith in a free market. That was entirely Reagan's bullshit. So when David Stockman, Reagan's budget director, admitted in '81 that the administration's economic forecasts were based on rosy scenarios rather than sound economic modeling, it should have been a scandal. It really wasn't. It was just a footnote, and nobody paid attention. The truth had become secondary to the narrative. So the narrative had overridden what was actually happening. So Reagan's skill was selling this approach, and you can't underestimate that. His folksy charm, his Hollywood honed, um, communication style allowed him to present ideologically driven policies as common sense, and people believed it. He famously declared, "Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem." He wasn't making an evidence-based argument. He was stating a principle that would become the Republican dogma for decades to come, right up to yesterday and the State of the fucking Union address. The disconnect between, or I should say, and yet Reagan's actual governance often contradicted those principles. He significantly increased military spending, added hundreds of billions to the national debt. He expanded federal government's reach in so many different ways, it's uncanny. But these contradictions didn't matter because the Republican Party had successfully shifted the debate from what works to what sounds right. And by the way, everybody's heard the rumor about Nancy Reagan. Please somebody say no, they haven't heard the rumor about Nancy Reagan, because I want to tell the rumor about Nancy Reagan because it's fun. So if somebody says no, I'll interject with the rumor about Nancy Reagan. No, don't listen to her. Okay, great. Thank you, Ann. You said no. Ronald Reagan was a Hollywood actor, and so he was married to Nancy, and the long substantiated rumor, other people in Hollywood substantiated this. Nancy Reagan was a blowjob queen of Hollywood when she and her husband were in Hollywood. She gave blowjobs better than anybody in Hollywood. If you were going to get a gasket job from somebody, you wanted it to be from Nancy Reagan because she was the deep throat queen. No, Google it. I promise you, I'm not kidding. Yeah, she literally was the blowjob queen of Hollywood. See, this is what you pay for. You pay for me telling you this shit, and then you're gonna go and Google it later, and you're gonna find out it's true, and then you're gonna be like, "God damn, what the fuck, Wendy?" I know these are weird things that I know. I will tell everybody, barring all knowledge that I have, I am literally the queen of useless knowledge. I have a shit ton of useless knowledge. So knowing that Nancy Reagan was the blowjob queen of Hollywood when she was younger is one of those useless things. So anyway, back to the Reagan thing. So um, these contradictions didn't matter because the Republican Party had successfully shifted the debate from what works to what sounds right. So the disconnect between rhetoric and reality became standard operating procedure for the GOP from that point forward. They could claim the stand for fiscal responsibility while exploding the deficit, family values, while electing morally compromised candidates who didn't give a shit and they did bad shit anyway, and freedom while restricting rights to certain groups. The principles were flexible to them at the time. What remained constant was the ability to convince their base that they were fighting for something greater than mere policy outcomes. So now we have to talk about Newt Gingrich. If Reagan's contribution was making this new approach palatable to mainstream America, Newt Gingrich would innovate this into a thing that you could not possibly conceptualize. So Gingrich's innovation was recognizing that the conflict itself could be a winning strategy. Oh, that's a yeah. Everybody should do that. Listen to Elaine, um, because I remember that. Elaine, I'm old enough to remember that. Um, by the way, Elaine, I'm just going to warn you. You are probably going to get dragged into the live when we get to the end of this because I think you're fucking cool. So Gingrich's infamous memo. Go Google it and read about it. Language, a key mechanism of control, advised Republicans to describe Democrats and their policies with words like corrupt, devour, greed, hypocrisy, sick, traitors, and pathetic. Um, and this wasn't just nasty politics. It was a deliberate strategy to undermine the very possibility um, of good faith debate. In 1994, Contract with America happened. That helped Republicans take control of the House for the first time in 40 years. Uh, it wasn't primarily a governing document, it was just a marketing tool. It presented Republican positions as principles rather than policies, making them harder to debate on practical grounds. How do you argue with fiscal responsibility and strengthening families? That's Gingrich that started that whole fiscal responsibility bullshit that the GOP and the libertarians even now push. The devil was in the details. Um, but by elevating abstract principles over concrete policies, Republicans could claim the moral I'm above and the moral high ground, um, while pursuing partisan advantage from a governing perspective. So during the Clinton administration, Gingrich perfected the art of obstruction as principle. The government shutdowns were portrayed as political tactics, but as moral stands against an immoral administration. The impeachment of Bill Clinton wasn't presented as a partisan attack, but as a defense of rule of law. Never mind that those actions damaged governance and divided the country. They reinforced the narrative that Republicans were standing on principle while Democrats were merely just fucking around and playing politics. That's how Republicans saw the Democrat Party. The approach reached its logical conclusion with the infamous statement from Mitch McConnell in 2010, wherein he literally said the single most important thing that we have to achieve is for President Obama to be a one-term president. Not improving the economy, not addressing national challenges, not representing their constituents, defeating a Democrat with the principle that mattered the most. That was why Mitch McConnell attacked the fuck out of Obama. The result was a party increasingly defined not by what it stood for, but what it opposed. Practical governments became secondary to ideological purity. Results became less important than the performance of principled opposition, and the American people got fucked in the ass with no lube as a result of the process. So, now we get to the Bush era. George W., the smirking frat boy, nice speech Pope, I feel like you really have to be a dumbass if you can tell the Pope of the Catholic Church, nice speech Pope. His appeal wasn't based on expertise or experience. It was based on his claimed moral clarity and unwavering faith. You're getting a visual. Good. Then my vivid imagery is working. Bush didn't just have policies, he had convictions. He didn't make decisions based on evidence. He made decisions because he shot from the hip with his pistol. And then he basically gave Will Ferrell a career for both terms, imitating George W. Bush in a way that nobody else could. So the Bush administration's approach to governments was famously captured by a senior advisor, who is, by the way, wildly believed to be Karl Rove, but nobody's ever confirmed this, who told journalist Ron Suskind that people like Suskind were in what we call the reality-based community, which is defined as people who believe the solutions emerge from your judicious study of discernible reality. Rove famously would then, although unconfirmedly, admit That's not the way the world really works anymore. We're an empire now, and when we act, we create our own reality. That wasn't just arrogance, it was a logical endpoint of the Republican Party's decades-long journey away from objective reality. When you believe what you're doing is God's work, evidence becomes optional. And when you believe your principles are divinely inspired, contradicting facts can be completely dismissed. And through it all, Bush maintained his image as a man of principle, which is where we're going towards. Faith-based initiatives didn't solve social problems, but none of that mattered because the Republican Party had just successfully convinced its base that the intentions mattered more than the fucking outcomes, and the principles mattered more than the goddamn results. Now, enter the Tea Party. Do we all remember the Tea Party? I remember the Tea Party, and I don't want to remember the Tea Party. With the election of Barack Obama, triggered the next phase of the Republican Party's evolution, the Tea Party movement, ostensibly focused on fiscal responsibility and opposition to government overreach. The Tea Party represented the full flowering of the seeds that had been planted way back in the 70s, a constituency defined by a practical policy preference, not by practical policy preference, but by the adherence to abstract principles and cultural grievance. Continue to fight the social wind of change. Tea Party Republicans didn't just disagree with Democratic policies, they viewed them as an existential threat. And yes, Peaceful Warrior, was complete and total racism. Healthcare reform wasn't just a policy that they opposed, it was fucking tyranny. Budget negotiations weren't just political disagreements, those were moral imperatives. Compromise was just unappealing. Wasn't just unappealing, it was a flat out betrayal, a flat out human betrayal. This approach reached its apotheosis in the debt ceiling crisis of 2011 and 2013, when the Tea Party Republicans were willing to risk economic catastrophe rather than compromise on their principles. The fact that defaulting on the national debt would contradict their stated concerns of America's financial future became irrelevant. What mattered was the performance of principle, opposition, and not practical consequence. The Tea Party movement also revealed the racial undertones of the GOP's decades-long strategy. The Tea Party revealed that GOP members are a bunch of fucking racists, and they don't give a shit about anybody but white people who are Christian and have 2 kids and live in their little house and go to church every Sunday. The fact that defaulting on all of that made it the case. Although the Tea Party supporters claimed their opposition to Obama was purely policy-based, the movement was riddled with constant racist imagery and rhetoric. The birther conspiracy theory, which, by the way, was perpetuated by Donald Trump and Alex Jones and a whole shitload of other people. The false claim that Obama wasn't born in the United States was embraced by a significant portion of the GOP base at that time, revealing how the party's principles could serve as a thin veneer for primal motivations. By this point, the Republican Party had completed its transformation. It turned into the weird, fucked up chimera that Bellerophon needs to fucking slay, and we just haven't found the Bellerophon to do it yet. Now, enter the inevitable conclusion. Donald Trump. Donald Trump isn't just an aberration. He was a logical conclusion to the Republican Party's 5-decade journey away from objective reality. Here we have a man who lied as easily as he breathed, who created his own reality through sheer force of will, and who valued loyalty over competence, who views governance as a zero-sum battle rather than a responsibility to all Americans. Trump embodies everything the GOP had become up to this point. Go back to his campaign slogan. Reagan did it, so Trump would do it. Make America great again. Direct echo of Reagan's 1980s campaign, but stripped of every pretense of policy substance. Trump's appeal wasn't because of specific proposals or expertise. It was based on his willingness to say out loud what many in the GOP believed in their own hearts. The Republican establishment that initially opposed Trump quickly fell in line once he secured his nominations. This wasn't just political expediency. It was recognition that Trump represented years of buildup and years of evolution. So the Trump presidency has the reductio ad absurdum of the Republican approach to governments. Alternative facts, fake news, this isn't the truth. They weren't just cynical tactics 30 years ago. They're controlling principles now. And cultural identity over practical governance is what has taken control. When the COVID-19 pandemic happened, we experienced the same thing. And all through that, Republican voters remained loyal. They didn't question it. They believed that it was true. This wasn't because they were stupid or evil, although in my theory they probably were. It was because the party had spent decades conditioning them to the value of cultural affiliation over practical outcomes, to trust their political tribe more than neutral experts, and to view political compromise as a moral failure. That's how the fuck we got here. So where do we go from here? The question facing America now is whether Republicans or Democrats will control the government, and whether we can rebuild the shared reality of in what democratic governance is even possible. If we can't, then the GOP's 5-decade experiment is going to prove itself true, and it will have done more damage to America than we have ever seen in our lifetimes. I'm 52 years old. I've been through 50 of the years of this evolution happening, and it's just a fucking disaster. And it would destroy the American experiment itself if it were successful. And to me, I don't know about all of you, but that would be the ultimate fuck you to everything this country has ever stood for or was meant to stand for. And there, I'm off my soapbox now. Now, who am I going to pick on?
I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm like total shit. I've been homesick with a cold for 3 days. I can't find my glasses. My hair looks like shit. Hello.
Hi.
Also, 52. Oh, you kid. I'm going to be 60 in July. So,
No, I know you. I know you got one up on me. I know you do. I just. By the way, I have to tell you, Elaine,
mm.
you are the first person to so willingly come into the live. I normally have to coax people.
Oh, I'm an attention whore from way back. So,
Here you are now, face to face with Wendy the Druid. You can literally now ask me anything, or you have 3 minutes. You can talk about whatever the fuck you want.
oh, good Lord. I, what's what's your major issue? Your major, social or political issue that you're committed to right now?
Oh, that one's actually. Can we stop mistreating queer people?
Mhm.
I have been a queer person for a long time. I've been a trans woman for now a little over 5 years.
Mhm.
And I live in a very queer family, and we have very queer kids. And so,
Mhm.
like, my big soapbox outside of the fact that I'm a Druid, which everybody asks me about that, and I'm like, well, our Druids aren't like Christians. We don't try to convert people. We just try to heal people or whatever. But
Mhm.
yeah, my bigger focus is I'm really tired of legitimate Aqua people getting mistreated.
Mhm.
And I live in Georgia. So when I go outside of the Atlanta perimeter area,
Mhm.
yeah, I get stink-eyed. I get, T-slurred a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Those all happen constantly, and so yeah, I would like for that to stop.
Mm-hmm.
I realize that's a social change issue, and I mean, after we talked about the Republican metamorphosis over the last 50 years, I realize a large portion of that is because of that change and that metamorphosis, and then the conditioning, of the Republican Party on its base to do that. And so those people are going to be that way until those people just aren't here anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that would be my that's the hill I'm dying on.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hill I'm dying on. How about you?
I think there's so many. I mean, I've been a lesbian for 60 years. I've known about it for 40. Let's just put it that way. And I'm involved in abortion rights activism also for about 40 years.
Oh wow.
And that's probably the main political focus that I have right now. Not
Right.
because I don't think the LGBTQ is important, but I did a lot of that back in the day, and I'm kind of in a corporate job now, and it's it'd be one thing for me to get you know um, filmed or whatever in front of Planned Parenthood, and another thing for me to get filmed at a Pride March or whatever. I mean, I think that's pretty sad, but um, I've still got a life to live. So, but I really think classism, even more so than racism and sexism, classism is, especially now with the oligarchy that we're tilting towards, or I should say, hurtling towards.
I yeah,
um,
I don't we're not leaning Tower of Pisa tilting. We're like full tilt running down the hill
mhm,
with a
mhm.
shovel in hand, and there's a bull at the bottom of the hill, and
Yeah,
we're gonna
it's
hit the bull in the ass with a shovel running down the hill.
hmm yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think classism is at the heart of what's wrong with society now. Lack of empathy goes along with that because people don't. I mean, I'm not poor, but I've certainly been poor, and
Yes, yes,
if
exactly.
you if you forget what that's like, or if you were never in those situations yourself, maybe it's easy for you to say, well, I don't care. But
Yeah, I agree completely.
mhm,
Um,
so,
the yeah the class warfare issues. Um, I wrote an article in the archive. It may not have hit the archive yet. It might still be open for non-paid subs. Um, but wage theft
mhm,
and wage limits,
mhm,
and because nobody needs $1 billion,
mhm,
we
mhm,
shouldn't have billionaires. We
mhm,
should have. If you want to be a multimillionaire, be a multimillionaire. I don't give a shit. But when you hit billions of dollars,
mhm,
um, why?
mhm,
I mean,
mhm,
why? Um,
mhm,
if you're a billionaire, you'll never spend it. When you look at like Warren Buffett, Warren Buffett's like,
right.
please tax the shit out of me. I should
Mhm,
I should be paying 50%
mhm.
taxes.
Yeah, but
And if I
the same people who are, lining up to kiss these billionaires' asses right now are the ones who think that somebody who waits tables or washes dishes, shouldn't get paid anything. It's like all their identification is with one end of the scale and not with the people that are, below them or even at the same level as they.
no, and I completely agree with you.
Hmm.
Um, I completely agree with you. So I'm glad that you and I have a similar sense of opinion.
Oh yeah.
I was hoping that you would just be this cool.
Oh well. Geez, I don't. have too many women tell me tell me anything good anymore. I joke that I'm a retired lesbian. I don't have time for that shit anymore. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that makes my sides hurt. That makes my sides hurt. Um, oh, it's being said that Elon Musk may be the first trillionaire. Janice, that makes me even more sad.
Mm.
It's more sad. I would tell you, by the way, Elaine, if you could go back to like 2 lives ago. No, my last live. Janice Lynch is an amazing individual,
Mm-hmm.
and she's fun to talk to. So you should definitely. Is that a cat behind you?
This is
Yes.
Captivat. She's the third one. And I know, yeah, the feminist is gonna die alone with a bunch of cats. I know. But
Look, mine is like right over there, and
yeah, I
he,
have three. So
yeah. Oh, that's such a pretty.
she's a good girl, ain't she? Yeah, she's a good girl. Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, my cat's name is Coltrane. I'll give you 3 guesses why. Right. I'm a
Yeah.
blues fan. I'm a
Well,
jazz and I'm a jazz and blues fan. So
this one is named Castavet. Can you guess why? Have you
Castivet.
ever read Rosemary's Baby?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. She's my little devil child, aren't you?
Gosh, I completely forgot that.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in good company. Janice Lynch, her husband, is a famous artist,
Okay.
and so that's why she's fun to talk to a whole
Oh,
bunch.
okay.
I know Janice is going to make a comment now,
Mm.
but yeah. So we have good people in the publication that follow the publication, and so yes. When I host a live, you have to be warned that if I have dragged you into the live before, I will drag you into the live again because I keep track of the people that are fun to talk with, and I round robin who
Well,
I pick.
hopefully next time I will have washed my hair and not have 3 days
Oh
worth
please,
of snot up my nose. But
well,
yeah, I'm just glad it's not COVID.
well, I mean,
Mm.
really, isn't
Yeah.
COVID like completely so endemic now that?
Well, it's going to go away in another couple of weeks anyway, right?
Oh right, yeah, of course. No, don't feel
Mm.
bad. I don't have any hair, so I don't really
Mm.
wash my hair all that often. But then two, I don't put my makeup on or anything. People tell me like, Wendy, I think you're a very vulnerable communicating individual because you don't put on your face, your wigs or anything. I'm like, no. I mean, just during the week. I mean, I really
Well,
care more about getting the word out to everybody than I care about how the fuck I look.
I don't have that.
Um,
I don't have time for that shit either. I was in my 20s. I tried to be butch for about 2 weeks. I went out and bought all these suits and ties and stuff. They were all pastels, man. It was ridiculous. Wasn't it? Yes, it was. So,
I mean, some of my lesbian friends tell me, Wendy, I think you look better than I do. And I'm like, I don't know about that.
uh,
I
yeah.
don't know about that. Well,
Mm.
Elaine, thank you, and
I'm sure.
thank you for reading and engaging. So,
Oh, I'm so glad to meet you.
it's a complete delay. Oh wait.
What?
Today Carlos Slim was so in. Yeah. Janice, that actually happened like 2 days ago. Carlos Slim, who is the owner of the largest telecommunications company in Mexico, and he is the richest person in Mexico. Um, Basically, what Musk did, I wrote an article about it, so go read it. He Musk retweeted that Carlos Slim had ties to the cartels,
Mm-hmm.
and when that happened, Carlos Slim said, "You know what? Fuck you and your Starlink contract," ripped it up, and that's going to cost Musk like $20 billion. So here's the thing. Here's the rollout of that. The rollout of that is this. Um, one of Canada's PMs has come forward and said they're going to tear up their Starlink contract. and other countries are saying they're going to tear up their Starlink contracts. So if that keeps happening, I've done some research about this. The number of, like Musk could lose between 100 and 150 billion dollars just on those contracts alone. And then on top of that, everybody's selling their Teslas. Tesla's losing money. Tesla stock is dropping out. If Musk keeps being a gigantic fucking asshole, he's going to run out of money and he'll go in the poorhouse, and then I'll be happy.
I like that.
So, well, Elaine, thank you. I'm going to let you go now, and we're going to wind down the session because I have dinner here and I have not eaten it yet.
Okay.
So
Very nice
thank you.
to meet you.
Yes, thank you, Elaine. Thank you for joining. I'm gonna. So we're gonna. Yep. Oh, okay. Wow, that was fun. So, Elaine, I'm just gonna tell you, you're gonna come back into the live again soon. Yeah, Janice, I churn out a shit ton of. Basically, I should just point that out to everybody that's on the live. Just like David Banner says in the Avengers movie, that's my secret cap. I'm always angry. I live in a perpetual state of anger, and when I can't sleep at night, I break out my phone and I start typing shit. And then in the morning time, before I go to work, I take all the brain dumpy shit that was writing the night before. I funnel that into an article, a series of articles, and then I publish them. So that's why I'm prolific. I'm prolific because I'm perpetually fucking angry all the time, so that everyone is aware. So I hate to do this. I normally leave the ending session open for questions, but I really need to eat food. So I'm going to part with everyone. One, thank you everybody for supporting the publication. Wendy the Druid is a paid for publication. If you have it in your heart to do so, then please consider being a paid subscriber. But if not, I completely understand. Be a free subscriber and then share the fuck with all of your fucking friends and tell all your fucking friends to read my stuff, our stuff, because we're a group of individuals. And stay strong and unified. We'll get through this together. I love you all, and be safe.